Hello and welcome to the panel at DublinBIC. Today is Thursday, the 7th of April, and I'm delighted to welcome Mark Little to the panel. Mark, you're very welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks, Martin, for having me.
Mark, you have been a journalist, a broadcaster for many years. You were the Washington correspondent of RTE, I think from the time of Bill Clinton up to the time of Barack Obama. You set up social news agency Storyful, which was sold in 2013 to Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation. After that, you were VP with Twitter and managing director of their EMEA headquarters here in Dublin. And since then, you have set up Kinzen. While I stopped to catch my breath, could you tell us about Kinzen, please?
Yeah, I suppose when I left Twitter, it was around the time that we saw the sort of rising concern about the spread of misinformation. And so I realized what I wanted to do with my life was to try to find ways to connect citizens to quality information, particularly working with the sources of quality information, the quality publishers, but also helping the platforms themselves, raise up the good information and try and see if we could suppress the misinformation. So Kinson was started by myself and my former Storyful colleague, Anya Kerr. We founded the company in DublinBIC's offices in Merrion Square in Dublin a couple of years back. And what we're focused on is using a combination of human intervention and artificial intelligence to spot the good information, promote that, and spot the bad information and help moderate and mitigate the risk of misinformation. So we work with publishers of quality information. They include regional publishers, newspapers across Ireland, UK, and also then some of the platforms as well in spotting an early detection of misinformation. So we've been fascinated by the use of, as I say, artificial intelligence. What I mean by that is there's artificial intelligence, it's a wide range of skills and it's kind of used by people in a very blunt way, AI, but actually we use natural language processing, which helps us dive deep into the nature of content online and spot, topics and entities and categories and put together patterns through graph theory, which is a form of machine learning. So all that science is fantastic, but there's also then the real science of how do you get human intervention? How do you train algorithms not to promote the worst kind of content, not to reward our worst instincts and our biases, but give humans the power to actually choose to pick good information. So that's kind of what we're doing. And we've developed tools for publishers to give their users the power to pick the articles they want, the kind of topics they want to see, and then also a content moderation tool that's helping some of the platforms, detect very early conversations they should be worried about, whether it's people promoting conspiracy theories around coronavirus, or it be just conversation and words that are dangerous within the context of conversations about such important things as health right now. So it's been a fascinating journey over the past couple of years. But what we're realizing is now is the moment that we need this kind of superhuman combination of good old-fashioned human skills like journalism combined with this cutting-edge technology like natural language processing and machine learning.
For the largest publishers to whom you're talking, do they recognize this problem the way you do? And are they seeking to invest in a solution for it?
Yeah, it's funny. Someone said to me recently about, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen, and that's been the case over the past couple of months. I think anybody who knows the media business will understand that there's been a decline in the fortunes of the mainstream media organizations. And the ones that are doing really well right now and the ones that are going to survive, particularly the shock of COVID-19, which has been absolutely terrible for any media business depends on advertising. The ones that are doing really well, like the New York Times just added 600,000 new subscribers in the first 3 months of this year. That's another 10% on top of the 6 million they already had. So news organizations that are connecting directly with the individual, giving them a chance to find ways to connect with quality information and not just throwing advertising at them. They're the people that are going to survive and thrive, but they need new technology like the kind of stuff that Kinson is developing. So for example, we help news publishers build personalized experiences like newsletters, which are becoming increasingly popular as a way of connecting with information. I don't know about you, but I have about 5 go-to emails I get in the morning. And news publishers are starting to move toward that kind of user experience. We help those publishers personalize that experience for the user, allowing the individual consumer of news to choose the topics they want to see and to have some role in selecting the kind of information that they want to receive every single day. And that just builds deeper engagement between what is the traditional relationships that should be a journalist and a citizen. And that's what we're trying to do, is deepen the engagement between journalists and citizens. And I think the big publishers and even the small ones who are under real pressure right now, they know they've got to move much more to subscription and membership and away from dependence on advertising, and dependence also on the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world, which has not been good generally for the media business.
The spectrum of publishers has never been wider. You've mentioned the New York Times, and it goes down to citizen bloggers and vloggers and so on. The problems that you've mentioned and the kind of solutions that Kinzen is delivering, I'm guessing is certainly appropriate to the New York Timeses of this world. Is it also appropriate to the much smaller publishers?
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading something about Jeff Bezos back in 1997, said he's on day one of the internet revolution, And I think a lot of us feel like it's now the end of day one. There's nothing new to be invented. I take exactly the opposite sense of it all. There's huge doom and gloom in the media business for absolutely good reasons. And I mourn every day when I see job losses with big organizations. But I also see something exciting happening, a new day one. And that is a kind of a convergence, right? So anybody, let's just say a lot of those out of work journalists or people who are analysts, and they can build their own newsletter, and they can start using certain platforms like Patreon, which allows you to get donations from people who are your loyal fans, and building small businesses. So every single creator, influencer, journalist, they can be their own publisher now. They just have to start off with a podcast or a newsletter. And we're helping those kinds of people engage. Every publisher now has to act a lot more like the Netflix and the Spotify of the world. And that's what we're helping them to do, allowing their users to customize a daily experience that empowers them. And then finally, every platform is going to act more like a publisher. They're going to have to be way better at moderating the content on their platforms, taking responsibility for what's going on. And, I've been impressed by the work of people like Twitter and some of the other platforms to try and work out better ways of pushing down the conspiracy theories and the misinformation and pushing up the quality publishers. So in this conversion, everybody being a publisher, every publisher being a platform, and every platform being a publisher, there's a central core set of technology that's going to help us. And that's what Kinzen is developing. And that's why I feel this is kind of day one, not the end of the struggle, but the beginning of a new opportunity.
At the risk of sounding like a cynic, what do you find is the number one motivation of the publishers in looking to solve this problem? Is it to do with financial risk? Is it to do with reputational risk?
No, it's funny. Everything is derived from trust, right? Everything is derived. Every business model, every subscription you want is derived from the idea that someone's going to come along and have a daily routine where they want to come and they trust you to give them their daily news. Now, you can't have that if you're bombarding them with advertising and really crappy content. You have to develop something that every day those people will be happy to see in their email inbox or go in and check it every morning. And core to that is trust. I think there is a wave of consumer movement away from advertising type experiences to experiences that they can control. We always saw in Kinson that people have an app for everything, right? For exercise, for the food you eat, your transport every day, meditation. Everybody has apps that help them improve. And we think that the publishers and the media organizations that will survive and thrive are the ones who develop that kind of relationship with ordinary citizens, who give them a sense of trust and power and develop business models based on direct payment between the individual and the publisher, not relying on advertising, which is a dreadful way to build trust. In fact, it's the opposite. So that's the future we see, is for everybody from, as I say, that one person who knows something about technology, who's a newsletter, and they're charging $5 a month to 500 subscribers. to the New York Times with 6 million. Like everywhere in between that is this huge opportunity for technology providers, media tech companies like ours, to give these wide range of publishers the ability to directly engage with their users. So it's a very comparable, I think, to any subscription business. The real important part is the middle of the funnel, engagement, getting people up to a point where they now see the reason to pay you for a daily experience. And we sit in the middle and give people personalized, customized experiences, which have been proven to increase the chances that that person will convert to becoming a subscriber, a member. And then once they do that, that they'll stay loyal because they trust you to give them something that empowers them every day. So that's the core secret to what I think is a huge opportunity for technology companies to help these quality sources of information. That's where we see the next few years for Kinzen.
Very good. If I could turn it around to the perspective of the consumer, and I have a very selfish self-interest in asking this question, I can assure you. In the days of Cambridge Analytica, and when we see very powerful actors being able to manipulate elections in the largest countries in the world, how do I, as a consumer, have a chance, a possibility of being able to acquire and consume information that has some possibility of being valid?
I use the analogy of food. It's never a difficult one to compare, the importance of information. I mean, we need information every single day to let us live ordinary lives and extraordinary lives as well. From the weather in the morning to the transport, listening to the radio to hear what the latest lockdown news is. We need that information. And clearly, in the wake of all the scandals and the exposure we've seen of misinformation and toxic content, we don't trust what we see anymore. And we're right to be skeptical. There will be, I think, a huge shift toward platforms and publishers where you can trust them. And I think that's similar in many ways to the way over the last 20 or 30 years, we've started to see transparency around food labeling. So when we walk into a supermarket, we can pick up any food stuff. We know the guarantee is the supermarket has to have a sell-by date on that food. So we know if it's dangerous. We know it's organic, it's free range, or it has too much sugar. And then we can make a choice. We've never really had that so far with information. We don't know who those people are, the anonymous sources that you're getting your news from every day, or you're never quite sure who's manipulating the algorithms that are driving the platforms. You know that the publishers are desperate to get your views and they are generating a lot of crappy content. So you're never quite sure. And I think we're seeing a movement. And the first part of the movement is to create a sort of a purified layer of the open web, is to make sure that just like you walked into a supermarket, there will be no contaminants in that system. We can get the technology and the content moderation to exclude things that we know are the conspiracy theories, are the hoaxes, are the misinformation, the disinformation. So we'll take them away. Now we're left with the rest of the content. Now, if you want to go and consume sugary food, or in the case of information, your addiction to celebrity news, that's fine, as long as you know that. And this is the second battle, which I would call media literacy. We all have to get more educated about spotting the signs that someone is trying to either manipulate us or pull the wool over our eyes or help spot a quality source. What are the things that we can do in a similar fashion to the way we stopped touching our face and we've washed our hands? Is there a sort of a hygiene where we know that we can protect ourselves against people that are trying to manipulate us or pass off the wrong information as the right piece of information? So there's a combination, I think. The publishers, the platforms are going to have to use better technology, better content moderation to remove the contamination. And the rest of us are going to be like we are. Like my daughter now, eats egg white omelets. She doesn't consume sugar. She's 14 years old and she eats avocado every day. I don't know about you, but when I was 14, I was eating bowls of Rice Krispies with tons of sugar. I never knew what was in my food. I didn't see an avocado until I was about 20. So there's a shift, I think, in awareness of a lot of the stuff that we're putting in our bodies. And I would argue that we're starting to see the birth of a consciousness about the kind of information we put in our brains. And it's a similar trajectory. We've got to move to have regulation to make sure there's no contamination of the information. And we've got to, as individuals, become more conscious about rewarding the people that give us information that's good for us, and not paying attention to the people that are the chancers and the manipulators and the hoaxers and the fakers. And I think that's something that will have to be an individual battle for all of us, with the help of, I hope, people like ourselves and the quality journalists who have a different battle now.
When we get to that situation of a valid open web, will it be a person or an algorithm who's deciding which is a conspiracy theory and which isn't?
It's a great question. It will have to be a combination of both. The real challenge for all of us is to understand that those algorithms are not necessarily bad for us, as long as there's human intervention, that there's a feedback loop. Like I think not so much about artificial intelligence, but about augmented intelligence, about helping us as human beings, reward our intentions. I want to be better. How are you going to help me? So for example, you go to the airport, you've got 4 choices. Now the algorithm has selected 4 out of 100 ways you can get to the airport. So, it's making the right choice easy. That's the kind of algorithm we have to build. So I believe there's an historic right now battle going on to rewire the systems that were powering the internet in the age of Cambridge Analytica. And I think with the right kind of intervention and guidance, that we can train algorithms that will reward our best intentions and not hijack, the unconscious biases that we have. There's danger here, clearly, but I do think there will be a combination of human interventions to make these algorithms reward us, and also then I think a very important role for good old-fashioned journalism, good old-fashioned transparency, regulation as well. So it's going to be a balance. Governments have a role to play, but governments need to get much better at understanding the power of this technology. And I sometimes get embarrassed when I see, political subcommittees in whatever country in the world trying to question technology platforms when they don't know how they work. And I think we all have a responsibility, particularly regulators, to understand the right kind of regulation could unleash, I think, a potential for great creativity. The wrong kind of regulation, I think, could make the situation worse. That's kind of my basic sense of the overall 360-degree picture now.
Over the last few weeks, Mark, we've spoken to many entrepreneurs here on the panel at DublinBIC in spaces like logistics and online learning and digital health platforms and so on, who are definitely seeing a huge impetus in their business from the pandemic and all that's going around it. In a world where we have the man allegedly in the most powerful position in the world telling us to either drink or inject bleach, I'm guessing that must change things for Kinzen and what you're doing. Have you seen a new trajectory to your business over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think entrepreneur will tell you that you're defined by that crucible, that moment you're thrown into sometimes a very uncomfortable situation, sometimes a liberating experience. I think it's been a combination of that for all of us. No matter how resistant or future-proof your organization is, you must have gone through, a lot of troubling and uncomfortable truths over the last couple of weeks and months. For example, for me, as you can tell, I mean, I've grown up in rooms talking with people and seeing and having the body language. And as someone said recently in an article, that chemistry of the unexpected that comes about when people are sitting with each other. I feel the great loss, sitting here with you, just talking on a Zoom call is great, but there's something, always a little bit missing in that. But on the plus side, when you're challenged by, as I said, the movement of markets that sometimes takes decades, has happened in weeks. Like, we are going through, I believe, the greatest behavioral experiment in human history right now. And for those that will survive, they will probably be stronger than they could ever have thought. For those that are not going to survive, they're going to learn something quite dramatic out of this. And even businesses that may not survive this COVID-19, I think the entrepreneurs themselves will learn a lot of lessons that will help them grow. I know that sounds that's a very sort of slight advantage for people, but for us in Kinson, it really has magnified the reason that we exist. And that's the critical thing, I think, for all entrepreneurs right now. Why do you exist? We think about lifetime value as one of those key metrics we talk about, particularly in subscription businesses. But really think about lifetime value as an entrepreneur, and how much are you going to contribute when we're out the other side into the new normal? Why do you exist? Why should you survive? And these are the questions, I think, that will define the great entrepreneurs that will emerge out of this. I am very worried about the impact on things like financing and funding. I'm very worried about the fact that, you know, an increased pessimism might create an even worse impact right now on businesses that should survive and maybe have difficulties doing so. But I do feel right now that certain excitement that comes with discomfort. And I think that's going to be a defining characteristic. I do worry in Ireland, and particularly in countries that don't yet really value the reality of an entrepreneur's mindset in sort of a, you know, the way the government works, that we're not paying enough attention to, you know, trying to help the companies right now that are struggling, that should survive, that will have a benefit, and thinking about how we can help them through the short-term challenge they face to make sure they survive in the long term. So that is a worry for me. And, you know, I'm watching the work of groups like Scale Ireland, who are looking at the policy framework for us. But I think in general, with all those caveats, for me, these last few weeks have left me feeling a lot stronger. I know, ironically, as an entrepreneur personally, and I think the business that I lead and the team that I'm part of, I think have gone through a lot of, you know, tough choices and suffering over the past couple of, you know, months in terms of being separated. But I feel something very exciting right now for me as an individual entrepreneur, my business, and I think also obviously the space that I'm in. So yeah, the crucible of the last couple of weeks and months, we don't know how it's going to end. The new normal won't be normal, but I think out of this, there's going to be remarkable innovation and creativity. And I can't wait to see the kind of Irish companies that will emerge potentially as global players, as people offering a global solution. I can't wait to see them emerge in the weeks and months to come.
Very good. Mark, I was going to ask you about your experience as a serial entrepreneur and what keeps you going, but actually I think you've answered that really, really well there. Just to finish up, Mark, I'd have to say that, you know, as I said, we've spoken to many businesses over the last few weeks and how the pandemic has changed them and changed the opportunities for them. But I'd have to say that I can't think of anything that the world needs more now than some truth and honesty and valid information, and the ability for people to know that what the information they are consuming has some credibility to it. So I really am hoping that Kinzen achieves all of its objectives, and the very best of luck with it.
Thank you. And I think one of the things I'm finding out is the importance, any entrepreneur will say to you, what's the one thing above all you need? It's resilience. You know, you can be enduring lots of suffering for a long time when you're in a business. But when you get to the point where every day makes you stronger, like that's the secret to all of this at the moment, both in terms of the thing we're trying to do at Kinson by trying to make consumers and citizens not feel so overwhelmed all the time, is a sort of a mirror then, I think, of the way the entrepreneurial mindset is going to have to help people through this current crisis. So it's resilience, you know, understanding, do I have the cash flow? Do I have the team behind me? Am I consistent in my leadership? And then also relevance. That's the other big thing at the moment. I think everyone out there who is struggling with a business and they're asking themselves, can I do this for another 3, 4, 5, 6 years? Think about that other axis of relevance. You know, will the world be a better place because of my business when this is all over? You don't have to be changing the world. You don't have to be, you know, in the glamorous business of changing business models, but like, will the community that I serve, the citizens that I work with, will they be better off because I exist? And I think that's going to be the big question for everybody going through this, because that makes everything okay. Makes it all
and it's possible for the smallest business to address that question and have an answer to it.
And probably even more, you know, the businesses that are rooted in the daily lives of people, they're the ones that are going to come out good, you know. The ones that have some whiteboard solution for some massive big disruption of an industry are the ones most at risk. But the ones that actually can sit down every day and see some move, you know, needle moving, some data point increasing, some way they're making an individual's life better, more empowering, you know, they're the people that are right now, I think, the ones that should feel very, very comfortable and I think, suppose, inspired by their own resilience. They're the business that I hope survive, and they may not be the big sexy ones. They may just be the ones that make the new normal feel a lot more normal for all of us when it's all over.
I know that you and I think your co-founder, Anya Kerr, as well, have used the phrase that we've moved on from the old entrepreneurial adage of move fast and break things to move slow and fix things. And, I think you've just made the point very well that there's lots of opportunity, even for very small businesses, to do that in the world they're operating in.
Yeah, and I think that's, when Mark Zuckerberg came up with that phrase, he quickly changed it to build more stable infrastructure, which is not quite as eye-catching. But, that's in many ways what I feel we're involved in, this new day one. Like if day one of the internet back in 1997, when Amazon was founded and, Mark Zuckerberg was thinking his big idea was about moving fast and breaking things. Day one of this new internet is about the idea of building, stable infrastructure, things like the algorithms that are driving information, or the supply chains that are bringing our food to us, or the mental health services we can call upon on our apps. These are all the things that will be the new infrastructure of a radically decentralized society that's going to have to rely a lot more on personal empowerment. Like that's the day one that I'm looking at right now. And if you have a relevance to that empowerment of the individual, the citizen, then you're at the beginning of something quite incredible. If you're still trying to, outdo Mark Zuckerberg in your growth strategy and your hacking, you're at the end of day one, and that doesn't look that good. That's kind of the way I would contrast right now the difference between a purpose-driven business and the sort of addictive, subconscious behavioral tracking of the old age of the internet, which I don't think is going to survive what's just happened over the past couple of months.
Very good. Mark, on that very inspirational note, I'm going to conclude our discussion. Thank you very much for joining us on the panel at DublinBIC.
Thanks for having me, and thanks to DublinBIC for all the support over 2 businesses now. Thank you.
Thank you.